Hello there, and welcome to the wonderful world of ancient Greek philosophy. Now, when you think of philosophers, you probably picture guys in togas, stroking their beards and spouting off about virtue, right? Well, get ready to meet Diogenes of Sinope, the philosopher who said, "Hold my hemlock," and proceeded to flip the ancient world the bird. This wasn't your average Socrates in training. Diogenes lived his philosophy, and his philosophy was basically society is a hot mess, and I'm here to point it out in the most extra way possible. He lived in a jar, for crying out loud. Imagine the Airbnb reviews on that one. But hold on to your horses, or your chariots if you're feeling fancy, because Diogenes' story is more than just wacky antics. It's a story about challenging norms, calling out BS, and living life on your own damn terms. So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to dive headfirst into the life and times of the most savage philosopher you've never heard of. Our story begins in Sinope, a bustling city on the Black Sea coast, where Diogenes was born around 412 BC. We don't know a ton about his early life, but rumor has it he was the son of a banker. And what do bankers deal with? That's right, money. Now here's where things get interesting. Legend has it that young Diogenes and his dear old dad got caught up in a bit of a scandal involving some shady business with the local currency. Think of it as ancient Greece's version of insider trading or, just straight-up counterfeiting. Details are sketchy, as they often are with ancient gossip. But the long and short of it is this: Diogenes got exiled from Sinope. Whether he was actually involved or just caught in the crossfire, nobody knows for sure. But one thing's for certain, this early brush with hypocrisy left a mark on young Diogenes, setting the stage for his future philosophical shenanigans. So what does a disgraced young man with a bone to pick with society do? He packs his bags, or more likely his knapsack, and heads to Athens, the intellectual epicenter of the ancient world. Now, Athens was known for its philosophers, and Diogenes was about to meet the one who would change his life. Antisthenes, the founder of cynicism. Cynicism, in its purest form, wasn't about being a grumpy Gus who hates everything. It was about rejecting societal norms, material possessions, and basically anything that got in the way of living a virtuous life. Think of it as extreme minimalism meets hardcore truth-telling, with a dash of public nudity thrown in for good measure. Antisthenes, though initially hesitant, eventually took Diogenes under his wing. And boy, did Diogenes take to cynicism like a duck to water, or more accurately, like a stray dog to a discarded piece of meat. Speaking of dogs, Diogenes took the whole simple life thing to a whole new level. Forget fancy houses. He lived in a large ceramic jar, or like the kind they used to store wine or grain. Just casually hanging out where most people kept their bulk rations. He begged for food, walked around barefoot in all kinds of weather, and famously owned only a cloak, a stick, and a bowl. At least, that's what he started with. Then, one day, he saw a child drinking water from his hands and realized even the bowl was unnecessary. So he chucked it, muttering something about a child teaching him self-sufficiency. See? Extra. Now, let's talk about Diogenes' most iconic move, the whole walking around with a lantern in broad daylight thing. You see, Diogenes wasn't just trying to start a new trend in street lighting. He was making a point. He'd walk up to people in the marketplace, lantern held high, and peer at them intently. When they asked what he was doing, he'd reply, "Looking for an honest man." Subtle, right? The lantern stunt was classic Diogenes, a simple, absurd act that exposed the hypocrisy he saw all around him. He was basically calling out the phonies, the liars, the people who claimed to be virtuous, but didn't actually live up to their ideals. It was performance art as social commentary, and it made him a legend. Section 6. When Diogenes met Alexander. Shade thrown in broad daylight. One sunny afternoon, as Diogenes was chilling in his jar, minding his own business, probably contemplating the nature of existence or the merits of public urination, he had a rather unexpected visitor. Alexander the Great, ruler of all Greece and aspiring conqueror of the world, had heard tales of this eccentric philosopher and decided to pay him a visit. Now, most people would be, a little bit intimidated by the most powerful man in the world showing up on their doorstep, but not Diogenes. Nope, he barely acknowledged Alexander's presence. In fact, when Alexander asked if there was anything he could do for him, Diogenes simply replied, "Yes, you're blocking my son." Mic drop. Alexander, to his credit, was reportedly more amused than offended. He recognized Diogenes' audacity for what it was, a refusal to be impressed by power or wealth. As Alexander walked away, he supposedly remarked, "If I were not Alexander, I would be Diogenes." High praise indeed, coming from a guy who could literally have anyone killed with a snap of his fingers. But that's the thing about Diogenes. He didn't give a rat's ass about your status or your titles. He only cared about one thing, living in accordance with nature, and he wasn't afraid to call out anyone who wasn't doing the same, even if they were the most powerful man on the planet. Section 7. Unleash your inner dog, figuratively please. So what exactly did Diogenes believe? Well, for starters, he wasn't a big fan of societal norms. In fact, he thought they were mostly arbitrary and often got in the way of true happiness. He believed that virtue was the only good, and everything else, wealth, fame, even a good reputation, was ultimately meaningless. He also believed in living in accordance with nature, which for Diogenes meant embracing our animalistic side. He admired the simplicity and honesty of dogs, hence the whole cynic thing. It comes from the Greek word for dog-like. Dogs don't care about social status, material possessions, or what other people think of them. They eat, sleep, poop, and chase squirrels, and they seem pretty content with that, don't they? Diogenes figured humans could learn a thing or two from our canine companions. He believed that by rejecting societal pressures and embracing our natural instincts, we could achieve true freedom and happiness. Section 8. Trolling philosophers for fun and profit. Now, no discussion of Diogenes would be complete without mentioning his talent for trolling other philosophers. He was like the OG internet troll, except instead of leaving snarky comments on message boards, he'd stage elaborate pranks in the Athenian marketplace. One time, Plato, the big cheese of Athenian philosophy, defined a human as a featherless biped. Diogenes, never one to miss an opportunity for a good roast, promptly plucked a chicken and paraded it through the streets, shouting, "Behold, I've brought you Plato's man." Another time, Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, was giving a lecture on the virtues of self-control. Diogenes decided to spice things up a bit by sneaking up behind him and tripping him. As Zeno lay sprawled on the ground, Diogenes quipped, "I do believe you've fallen for something." These weren't just random acts of mischief, though. Diogenes was using humor and absurdity to challenge the status quo and expose the flaws in other philosophical schools. He believed that philosophy shouldn't be an abstract intellectual exercise confined to the ivory towers of academia. It should be a lived experience, relevant to the everyday lives of ordinary people. And what better way to make philosophy relatable than by injecting a little bit of humor and a whole lot of public humiliation? Section 9. Diogenes in the 21st century. Still relevant, still savage. Okay, so maybe living in a jar and harassing philosophers isn't exactly practical advice for the 21st century. But even though Diogenes lived over 2,000 years ago, his message is still surprisingly relevant today. We live in a world obsessed with material possessions, social media clout, and the relentless pursuit of success, however we choose to define it. It's easy to get caught up in the rat race, to compare ourselves to others, and to feel like we're never quite good enough. Diogenes reminds us that true happiness doesn't come from external validation or material wealth. It comes from within, from living in accordance with our values and embracing our true selves, even if that means being a little bit weird or unconventional. So the next time you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or like you're just going through the motions, remember Diogenes, the philosopher who lived in a jar. Remember his message of simplicity, authenticity, and not taking yourself too seriously. And hey, if you feel like walking around with a lantern in broad daylight, who are we to judge?